The stock market's at an all-time high. Unemployment is low. Consumer spending is breaking records. On the surface, life is good. The economy is booming. Everyone's spending. Everyone's celebrating. But underneath the surface, there's trouble brewing. Because while everyone's celebrating, 55% of Americans have less than $10,000 saved for retirement. And 1 in 4 Americans has zero retirement savings. Zero. And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you that the retirement crisis in America isn't coming. It's already here. Let's zoom all the way out first. The American retirement system is built on 3 pillars. And just like the Clint Eastwood movie, there's the good, the bad, and the broken. Let's start with the good. Social Security. Created in 1935, it's the bedrock of American retirement. The idea is simple. Workers pay in, retirees take out. It's funded by a 12.4% payroll tax split between you and your employer. And it's not just any worker. To qualify, you need 40 work credits, roughly 10 years of employment. In 1960, there were 5 workers paying in for every 1 retiree collecting. The math worked perfectly. Today, there are only 2.7 workers per retiree. And by 2035, that number drops to 2.3. The math doesn't work anymore. Fewer workers are being asked to support more retirees than ever before. Social Security actually has 2 trust funds, one for retirement, one for disability. Both are bleeding out. The Social Security Trust Fund is projected to be depleted by 2033. That's not a political opinion. It's math. When that happens, benefits get automatically cut by 23%. Every retiree collecting today gets paid less. And nobody in Washington is doing anything about it. The average Social Security benefit today is $1,907 a month. The average rent in America is $1,700. After rent, that leaves $207 for food, medicine, utilities, and everything else. And here's something people forget. Social Security was never designed to be your entire retirement. It was the floor, not the ceiling. But for 40% of retirees, it's their only source of income. The floor became the whole house. Now on to the bad. Pensions, or as most Americans call them, that thing their parents had. In 1980, 60% of private sector workers had a pension, a guaranteed monthly check for life. Here's what a pension actually is. Your employer promises to pay you a set monthly amount for the rest of your life. Their money, their risk. Today, only 4% of private sector workers have a pension, 60% to 4% in 40 years. The decline happened fast. And it wasn't an accident. In 1978, Congress created the 401k almost by accident, a tax benefit for executives that companies quickly realized could replace pensions entirely. So companies switched. They handed the retirement savings job to employees, stopped guaranteeing anything, and called it empowerment. Your problem now. And it's not just private companies. Public pension funds across America are underfunded by over $4 trillion. Teachers, firefighters, police officers, they have pensions, but many of those pensions are running out of money too. Which brings us to the broken, the 401k. America's answer to the pension problem. Here's the first problem. Only 56% of Americans even have access to a 401k through their employer. And of those who do, the average American contributes just 7% of their salary. Financial planners say you need at least 15%. The median 401k balance is just $28,000. The median, not the average. And here's something nobody talks about. Fees. The average 401k charges between 0.5% and 1% in annual fees. A 1% fee on a $200,000 balance sounds harmless. But over 30 years, that 1% costs you more than $100,000 in lost compound growth. Then there's what you actually need. Financial experts say $1.5 million minimum to retire comfortably. The gap is staggering. Here's the math. Save $500 a month starting at 22, retire at 65. With average market returns, you end up with about $1.4 million. But the average American starts saving at 31, contributes $164 a month, and ends up with around $270,000. That's not retirement. That's about 10 years of very careful living before the money runs out. 10 years. And then what? Add it all up, and America has a $7.1 trillion retirement savings shortfall, the largest in history. And when polled, 50% of Americans say they're not confident they'll have enough money to last through retirement. They're right to worry. Let's talk about who's hurting the most. Women retire with 30% less savings than men on average. They earn less, take more career breaks, and often live longer. The average woman lives 5 years longer than the average man. That means 5 more years of retirement expenses on 30% less savings. Gig economy workers, drivers, freelancers, contractors have no employer benefits at all. No 401k, no match, nothing. And low-income workers are the most exposed of all. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, saving for retirement isn't a choice. It's a luxury. And here's the retirement cost nobody talks about. Healthcare. The average couple needs $315,000 just to cover healthcare costs in retirement. That's before housing, food, or travel. And if one of them needs long-term care, a nursing home, assisted living, that's another $100,000 a year minimum per person. And then there's the duct tape solution. Millions of boomers are counting on their home equity as their retirement plan. The house is the 401k. Enter the reverse mortgage, a product where you borrow against your home's equity to fund your retirement. There's just one problem. Home prices can fall. And when they do, the duct tape plan falls apart. And now for the most uncomfortable part. Americans are working longer than ever before. The share of workers aged 65 and older in the workforce has doubled since 1985. Because when the savings run out, you don't retire. You go back to work. There's even a word for it now: unretirement. When people who already retired are forced back into the workforce. Over 3 million Americans have unretired in the last decade, and that number keeps climbing. Elderly poverty in America is rising again after decades of decline. 10% of Americans over 65 now live below the poverty line. And the cruelest part? Many elderly Americans working past 65 are doing it without employer health insurance, waiting to qualify for Medicare. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, a new generation enters the picture. The average Gen Z worker has $0 saved for retirement. Zero. And 55% of them say they're not even thinking about it yet. And honestly, it's hard to blame them. Rent takes 40% of the average Gen Z paycheck. Student loans take another chunk. But here's the compounding problem. Every year Gen Z waits is exponentially more expensive at the end. The clock is brutal. Millennials aren't much better. The median millennial retirement balance is $49,000. At 35, you need that to be at least $150,000. And millennials carry more student loan debt than any generation before them. $37,000 average. That money can't go to retirement. So here's where we are. Every generation is behind. Every generation is hoping the next one figures it out. It's a giant game of hot potato. Everyone's hoping the music doesn't stop while they're holding it. The government is hoping Congress fixes Social Security before 2033. Employers already passed their problem to workers back in the 1980s and never looked back. Workers are hoping the stock market bails them out. And the stock market doesn't care. And here's a risk nobody in their 40s talks about: the sequence of returns. If the market crashes right when you retire, it can wipe out 20 years of gains. A 30% market crash at age 62 hits you infinitely harder than a 30% crash at age 32. Because at 62, you don't have time to recover. That's why the 4% rule exists. Financial planners say withdrawing 4% of your nest egg per year gives your money the best chance of outlasting you. But here's what makes the retirement crisis different from other financial crises. It's not loud. It's not sudden. It doesn't make headlines. It's quiet. It happens one paycheck at a time, one missed contribution at a time. And unlike a stock market crash, it doesn't hit everyone at once. It hits individuals quietly, one by one, when it's already too late. And unlike most financial problems, it can't be fixed overnight. The math requires decades. You can't sprint your way to compound interest. You can't make up for 20 years of missed savings in 5 years. The math just doesn't work. So what can you actually do? First, if your employer matches your 401k contributions, maximize that match. That is free money. Not taking it is like refusing a raise. A Roth IRA lets you contribute $7,000 a year after tax and withdraw it completely tax-free in retirement. Use it. If you're 50 or older, you get catch-up contributions. An extra $7,500 on top of your 401k limit that exists specifically for people who got a late start. And start as early as possible. $5,000 invested at 22 grows to $160,000 by 65. The same $5,000 invested at 42 grows to just $40,000. Automate your savings. Set the transfer to happen before you see the money. What you never see, you never spend. Watch your fees. A low-cost index fund at 0.05% versus an actively managed fund at 1% sounds small. It costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. But here's the thing. Personal responsibility only gets you so far when the system itself is broken. Because when 44 million Americans have student debt, when rent takes 40% of paychecks, telling people to just save more isn't a solution. Telling broke people to save more isn't financial advice. It's a punchline. The real issue is structural. A system designed for a 1950s workforce being applied to a 2020s economy. In 1950, most workers had one employer for life, a pension, stable wages. That world is gone. Today you have gig workers with no benefits, people changing jobs every 3 years, 2 incomes barely covering rent, and a 401k that requires financial literacy nobody ever taught. Some countries figured this out. Australia forces employers to contribute 11% of every worker's salary to a retirement fund. No exceptions. No opt-outs. America tried auto-enrollment. When companies automatically enroll workers in 401ks, participation jumps from 37% to 86%. Same people, different default. The default matters. The system matters. But changing the system takes political will that nobody in Washington seems to have. Social Security's countdown clock keeps ticking. 2033 is not far away. Pensions are already gone for most Americans. They're not coming back. And the 401k is held together by market performance, tax laws, and the hope that nothing crashes before you turn 65. This is America, a country that told every worker, retirement is your problem now, and then made it nearly impossible for most people to solve it. The retirement crisis in America wasn't caused by one bad decision. It was caused by decades of small decisions, past responsibility, and quiet neglect. It doesn't look like a crisis because it's not dramatic. No market crash, no bank run, no emergency press conference. It looks like a 68-year-old working the overnight shift at a convenience store. It looks like a retired teacher choosing between medication and groceries. It looks like a 25-year-old who's never thought about retirement because rent is due next Friday. The stock market is at an all-time high. Unemployment is low. Consumer spending is strong. And 55% of Americans have less than $10,000 saved for retirement. Social Security is on a countdown clock. Pensions are a memory. And the 401k is parked between hope and the S&P 500. This is America, a country surviving on borrowed time.